If you want to do like a proper dry run, should I pull up the template that you came up with, the format?
Good idea.
Yeah, great idea.
Was it in marketing? I think it was.
Yeah.
It was a snippet. But
Speaking of, what's the name?
online 876 online, 876 digital. I don't know which one you guys prefer.
Either one is fine with me. What are you saying, Young?
876 digital, I think. I think digital is a more common word or adjective for Jamaica.
All right, then. 876 digital.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, I have the format. KP, you're going to be the one who actually hosts these, or am I hosting them, or is Young going to jump in?
Actually, I meant to ask you that. I feel comfortable doing it.
Great. I think that's a good fit, and I think it fits and aligns with the role. So take it away.
Hold on, have you found the snippet yet?
I have it. Do you need it?
Oh, yeah, I do have it. Yeah, I was just wanted to open it up on the right side.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay. And we're talking about, looks like a kindergartner did it.
That's right.
All right. So that's a quick timer.
I should have actually tried to make this video private or something.
Oh.
Doesn't really matter, but
I mean, yeah, nobody know how to. Yeah. All right, cool.
Okay. I see key in the chat.
All right, starting timer now. So 876 digital, right?
That's right.
All right. Let me just wing it. All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to 876 Digital, your premier Jamaican podcast where you discuss everything that is tech and entrepreneurial in topic. Here we are JA++, web design and strategic digital agency, and my name is Kareem Panton. I am joined by my Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Alexander Powell, as well as my Chief Technical Officer, David Young. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing well.
Good. This is our first live broadcast, so let's see how things go.
That was pretty impressive.
Yeah?
KFC quit showing a youth.
Where it's all about the fun, right?
Okay.
I wonder how many of the viewers even remember something like that. But yeah, the one and only.
KFC have to pay us for that plugin, kid.
Yeah, true.
One watching right now.
Yep. Shout out to Miss Tina Matalang, one of the heads at restaurants of Jamaica, my old boss's boss.
Yeah.
Whoever you are who's watching the stream, thank you for joining us.
It's me, bro. Come on.
Definitely. All right, so for today, what we're going to be looking into is the topic, it looks like a kindergartner did it. And this is something that you hear a lot in design work at the higher levels. Most people think about design as something that's largely complex, like flashy lights, that kind of stuff. And we've definitely run into that kind of thing from past clients when they think the work that we do for them is, for lack of a better word, elementary. So David, what are your thoughts on that, being the lead of our design and all things tech at JA++?
Yes, I mean, we can start with an anecdote of what happened to us specifically.
Right.
How long ago? It was about a year ago, right?
Just about.
Yeah, so we had a client who remained unnamed. And I guess we were very green at the time as well. So
definitely.
We did.
Yeah, it was our first ever client.
Yeah, our first ever client together as a team. We were very green at the time, and so we didn't have a good idea of the balance between the kind of design that we want to put forth and the kind of design that a Jamaican entrepreneur would find effective in the markets that they exist in locally. Mm-hmm. So we went ahead with the design style that we're comfortable with, which is very minimalist, very flat, simple imagery, modern sans serif fonts that when put together might seem a little too stripped down, a little too boring, I'd say, or too plain for the Jamaican audience. And a Jamaican audience is used to more, I guess what is more traditional in Jamaica is bright, extravagant,
Nothing.
neon flashing. Yeah, there's a point where you remember you asked a neon flashing button to be on the top of the
Oh
website.
yeah, yeah.
Buttons and words to pulse.
Yeah, words to pulse. That's what he used to describe it. And so he didn't like what we submitted, and he asked us. He told us that it looked like, what did he say at the time?
It looked like a kindergartner did it.
He said like a 12-year-old or something like that.
Yeah, I believe he said that as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so to him it appeared like something that's so simple that it looked like a child did it, essentially. And at the time, like immediately, like the first response that I had was, a little bit of disappointment in what we had put out. But then on reflecting on it a little bit, realized that that's exactly what we had intended to do, to make it so simple that a child would understand the objective of the website. So we had achieved our goal in a sense. We had achieved the goal that we were trying to accomplish, but the real goal that we realized afterwards is that we have to cater to not only our client and the audience, but as well as the kind of style that we want our philosophy to be defined by. So since then, it's been like a year, and I think we're getting closer and closer to a point where we're mixing the three expectations well enough so that each of them gets its representation. So we've found a design style that's still modern. It's very attractive, and our clients like it. And it's
definitely. I'm sure you can comment more on this as well, Alex. But even in casual conversations with for lack of a better term, laymen, friends that really aren't in the design space,
right,
the interface or user experience space, they would be using similar terms, like it doesn't have any flair or enough of this or enough of that. But when it boils down to it, you realize that all of those things really distract from the primary purpose of what the product you're creating is for.
Absolutely. And a change that's been happening on my end, at least, with the client who will remain unnamed. I wasn't too good at convincing him up front and demonstrating the value of the approach we were putting forward. I wrote him a well-written email that basically described what we were doing and why we thought it was good, but it didn't have any emotional or visceral impact on him. Because even after I sent him pictures from local brands like Digicel, from places like Uber and Tesla, and they reflected our design philosophy. But none of that was able to convince him once he had it in his head that this was subpar work.
Yeah. Would convince him today if you could go back and revisit?
Well, what I've been doing now is it all starts with building confidence as a consultant. At least for me, mentally, the framework that I was working with at that time didn't allow me to really push as hard. And I also wasn't as confident in the things we were doing as I am today. So, for example, when it's come to some of our other clients that we've had, they have raised similar concerns, but I'm able to easily quell them because I want to have a deeper understanding of why we're doing the things we're doing. There was a time when I didn't even properly understand things like why we use these color schemes, why is there so much negative space, why. I understood it on the you read and you can regurgitate level, but now I understand instinctually what makes for a better design that's easy to navigate. So I'm able to do that, and I'm able to point to our previous work that we've done with other people, which is a huge boost.
Yeah, definitely.
And finally, I'm getting better at building an actual relationship with the people involved, so the trust level is much higher. With the client who said it looked like a kindergartner did it, things were actually way too transactional in retrospect, because we didn't communicate that often on the personal level. It was primarily business conversation.
Gotcha. I see.
Yeah, and I also should have taken into account, if I could go back, I would take into account his age and the pre-existing materials he had. Okay. Because when I look at stuff, he gave me a business card, and when I look back at that business card, it was, I don't want to say overstuffed, but it was full of flashy elements and colors and so on and so forth. So if I could go back, I would have noted that obviously a minimalist style that uses primarily, I don't want to say softer colors, but not as flashy, wouldn't appeal to him.
Right.
Yeah, things turn out less cluttered. And even going back to my days of like cold calling or when I'm reaching out on social media and that kind of stuff, once I'm interacting with a potential client, like these are keywords that pop out to me. And literally just their speech, the words they're using, how they're talking about what they want their website to look like, lets me know how experienced or how savvy they are when it comes to user interface and design. So if I'm talking to a client and they use the hot word minimalist, I'm like, okay, this is going to be clean. This is going to be great because they're already in line with our own design philosophy.
Right.
If they start using, you know, where it's like complementary colors or simple to the point, and then they, you know, do the extra effort to like show us what they mean by that and send sample URLs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Already in line, then, you know, everything's looking like a piece of cake from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that stands out a lot.
Do you guys also think
Go ahead.
that a key part of this might also be managing their expectations so that before we start building or even before we make a mock-up, they have an idea of our design style?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of it that's changed for the better for us as well. And the second thing is that a lot of people, at least in the Jamaican space that I've spoken to, have a very different idea of the effort required. So part of what they're looking for is that when they see this minimalist design, they assume it is actually much easier than the traditional work. So they assume we're actually giving them less, which is part of the reason why they're so upset, because they think it literally takes less time, less effort. They don't know that this is actually more important. That's why actually what I do with every single person I talk to now is one of my leading points for the conversation is to say that you studied human-computer interaction and we have it nailed down to a science behind what works in user design and user experience.
Okay.
So that normally goes a long way to help them know that there's a formal background in this and we're not just doing it to be lazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember work and they say things like, this, honestly, this looks very basic, like anybody could do it. But it took me a very long time to kind of break out of the old habits that I had, even just the way that I approached art, the way that I approached design was, I guess, I don't want to say mired, but cluttered with a lot of traditional techniques and traditional advertising methods that were flashy and cluttered. And so now that as I've grown, it took a lot of time. You know, let's say like with a boxer who's like been boxing one way for a long time and then he starts to try to go professional. You have to unlearn a lot of the strategies that you had before, tactics or way of fighting. That's a big part of trying to design in materially or with minimalism.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me, we had briefly touched on it earlier, but it's trying to balance the minimalism with some level of flair to kind of appeal to what, you know, as Jamaicans, we find attractive, what they think is worth their investment. And I remember we were under different circumstances with another client, actually, and they just wanted us to do one thing, right? We designed something for them. And then when we looked at their website where our design would be hosted, it really wasn't up to our standard. And at that point, we were saying we really can't put our stamp of approval on this. And then we had offered to go in and then make some more edits to like the surrounding space to make sure everything is there reflects us. Because regardless of whether what we do is top class, if it's in a space that isn't, you know, reflective of that, then there's still going to be a disparity in what the viewer's thinking and feeling about what they see.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. So it's definitely something tricky to get around. Of course, there are still local brands that have the flair and, you know, this and that, but those are household names. So even without recognizing what they're advertising, you already know what it is.
Right.
You know, so that doesn't even help them much, to be honest with you, because their brand is already out there. But when you're comparing a website, a web page, or a design that is largely minimalist to one that is super flashy, neon lights, that kind of stuff, and then you stop and you try to think back on what you just read, even just run this experiment for the viewers out there, you know, you will recognize that you internalize more of what is actually being communicated in the minimalist design than in the flashy lights, because the flashy lights are just that. They're flashing, they grab your attention, but they don't hold it and imprint on your memory. So if you really want to communicate your brand, your message, your product, your service, definitely go more towards what is minimalist, what is clean, and what has been, you know, researched. The flashiness is something that we go off of instinct, and when you're doing business, it's something you hear about all the time in like finance and economics, like your gut feeling, those instincts. But it really is more beneficial to go off of what has been researched and is backed by science.
One thing that's interesting is that in Jamaica, for web services, they're valued much less than in the United States and other first world nations. But what's interesting is that they have no regard or no plan for analytics or any type of real measurement at all.
Yeah.
So even at the big companies that some of them I've spoken to, or some of them I know people who work for and with them, they don't really have like a strong metrics program in place for their marketing and advertising.
Yeah.
They track a few things, but they don't really get deep into it. So for most people, a website is just something you have. It's not a tool you use.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like that is where a lot of local companies are underutilizing the resources that they have access to, but they really don't tap into. As you said, a website for most of them is really just for face validity. Like if you're a company, you're expected to have a website, and you are. That is the absolute first step, you know, when it comes to building a certain level of credibility with not just clients, but potential clients and potential customers, the next person that could come through the door. If they Google you and see a website, then all right, you're already on the list for somewhere to check out. But it goes further than that. You know, as you said, there's so much more that goes into it, whether it be analytics or your ability to use the website to schedule your appointments. That kind of stuff is really not leveraged often. And so, I don't know, it feels like we're advancing in technology a lot slower than we should be. Although Jamaica has time and time again been lauded as the country in the Caribbean with the highest, you know, entrepreneurial pursuits, or the strongest base for entrepreneurial pursuits.
Right. One thing that was covered at the Kingston beta I went to was, so cutting the story short, a fellow pitched a robo app that basically invests on your behalf for the Jamaican market. And one of the fellas made the point that the technology is there, the APIs are there, everything is there, but it always, in the Jamaican context, it always comes down to people serving as roadblocks.
Yeah.
So what he was talking about is the fact that no matter how good your technology is, if you can't get the right people on board, then it's unlikely to succeed. And the right people who understand this type of technology and a more modern approach are never in the decision-making position, because Jamaica's retirement age is really a joke.
Yeah.
And most people keep their positions for extended periods of time, and it's still kind of a seniority-based system. So for these technology solutions to be highly effective, it might just actually be a matter of time or some type of high-level disruption across all industries.
Yeah. I think that's something I discussed with David previously, actually, that maybe it would take some significant, whether it be cultural shift or, you know, large wave of, I guess, new world education to have people, Jamaicans, recognize that there's more that can be leveraged from this kind of stuff, and it's worth investing in. Because all of the new entrepreneurs that are in their 20s, 30s, these are the buyers that they're running into. They have the ideas, they build the companies, they put together the teams, and they're ready to move. But the people that they would be pitching these things to aren't ready to hear it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. One thing that someone was talking about, so I didn't even tell you guys this story, but when the same person was presenting, I believe I said to you guys at one point, somebody's getting shredded.
Yeah.
Well, it was this guy, and basically they just broke down his idea, and you could tell he was substantially demotivated.
Wow.
And well, yeah, they just told him this isn't gonna work for another 5-10 years.
Remember what his idea was?
Yeah, it's a robo app to invest on your behalf.
Yeah.
But what it does is it uses machine learning to take a grasp of the market, and then you put in your risk profile that you're willing to tolerate, and it basically works on your behalf.
So why did that? It's not really fun enough.
It had to do with the number of brokerages in Jamaica and how they were controlled by a select few people, and low volume of trades as well for the stock market. Because there are apparently less than 100 companies on the Jamaican Stock Exchange, and there are sometimes less than 1,000 trades a day.
Okay.
Nice.
To learn from.
Yeah. Right. There wasn't enough to learn from, which was a core point of the idea. And also they did not think that the brokerages would let this go through, and you would have to go through with them because he wouldn't have the appropriate licenses. And he would only really have options of about 2 people to talk to get this done. So that's why the topic of you have to get right people on board.
Yeah.
And he was saying, one of the guys was saying that he doesn't think, knowing the 2 people, he doesn't think this is gonna run with them.
Okay.
And then there was
a big thing to consider too is that it's a different market out here. Like, you know, we try to port these apps and ideas from America, but they have a population of 350 million compared to our 2.8.
Right.
Yeah, and they're much more tech oriented than we are in the States. So it's not only we're competing on 2 different fronts right there to try to port ideas over. So some things that work, they're successful, they just don't. There's just not enough room here for it.
Yeah. Kareem touched on that a little bit in his most recent blog post as well.
I was actually just about to bring that up. And that actually brings us to an excellent segue into what we'll be covering next week, which is the madness of Jamaican entrepreneurship. You know, there's a lot in the space that goes on that people on the outside don't see. And even if you're somebody that's just recently entering, there's levels to it, you know. So there are wins, there are losses, and there are complications like everything else. But for this week, for this week, gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on 876 Digital. Thank you for all the viewers that have come through. And we will see you next week, same time, on the madness of Jamaican entrepreneurship. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
Cool. Sorry, we're going over time.